Hello and welcome to the Atomic Lizards podcast. Today we have a bonus episode for you on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I am Miranda and I'm joined with Udi and Dan, and today we'll be talking about spoilers and our thoughts on the movie. So, let's get started. What did you guys think?
Yeah, you can go first, Miranda.
Alright. Well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a 5 out of 5. All the stars, 100 out of 100. I think I might be the only person who likes this movie. I've seen a lot of reviews online. It's like 1 star, 2 stars, 1.5 stars, 0 stars. I guess people are allowed not to like it, but I really enjoyed it. Some of the highlights: Ryan Bagara, he's got a second cameo. We got to see Jimmy Woo having lunch with Scott. That was amazing. William Jackson Harper is in it. He's cool. I liked the little gloop dude. I liked the mechanic on how they understood the language in the quantum realm. I called the ants before we saw it, since we saw it together. I was like, you know what I want? I want quantum ants. I'd be happy if it had quantum ants, and I got quantum ants, and I'm so happy. And I'm really happy about that. I'm really glad there was quantum ants in it because I was not expecting it at all, and we got them, and I'm so happy about it. I liked the fact that they brought back the Baskin Robbins joke. Also, did you know that this is the 31 movie in the MCU, and Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors, so that's pretty funny. That's pretty cool. I liked the costumes. I think they were all designed well. I think the CGI, although the entire movie's on a green screen, and that usually annoys me in the MCU, it was nice to see the CGI and special effects used in creative ways in a different universe and basically space, quantum space. I liked the fact that we got to see multiple versions of Ant-Man and the Wasp in that one scene. Thought that was pretty cool, although it reminded me of a scene in Toy Story 2 when Woody falls into the trash can. So I was like, that's an interesting reference there. Oh, I like the costume design, which I think I already mentioned, but there's some pretty cool creature designs in there, like the guy with the yellow swirl head, he was cool. The revolutionary leader, I liked her. She's a good example of different body types that can be shown in film. It was pretty cool to see that instead of someone who's super skinny and wedges, because that's annoying because it's all over. I like the fact that I had fun. I was able to enjoy the movie. I laughed a lot. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was a great, just cheesy sci-fi movie, and it kind of just can stand alone. I love the fact that Kang got trampled by ants, because why should I care about this character? They haven't shown me why I should care about him. So the fact that he gets trampled by ants, I found hilarious. And, it's just about Scott going and trying to get his daughter back and them finding each other and getting back home. So it's a pretty simple plot. And if you enjoy dumb CG sci-fi movies, then I would recommend giving it a watch. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I know you guys have differing thoughts, so who would like to go now?
Okay, I think I will go next because I have a feeling Udi is going to be the most negative out of the three of us. So we will save his thoughts for last. So I did think that this was one of the more weaker MCU films because this is supposed to be like the start of Phase 5. And like I remember when this movie was coming out, like there was an IGN article that was saying that this is supposed to have the type of effect on Phase 5 of Marvel that Captain America Civil War had on Phase 3 of Marvel. This is supposed to be the movie that sets everything into motion, and it's supposed to set up Kang the Conqueror, who is supposed to be the next Thanos for Marvel. Now, you said earlier, like, why should I care about Kang? Well, you should care about Kang because he's supposed to be the next big threat to come after Thanos. And the fact that he was so easily beaten how exactly is he supposed to be this big threat if he's beaten so easily? Now, I know we got his variants. His variants are going to come into play. And I guess that's the whole idea behind Kang is he's not just one villain, he's all of these variants. But like even the one that we see in Quantumania, he's been talked about as this big, powerful villain. He's conquered, destroyed many timelines. Janet was so afraid to fight him because of how powerful he was that she just hid from him for 30 years while she was in the quantum realm. Like literally his name invokes fear in some characters. Like I mean this is kind of going a bit ahead, but like with the after credit scene when we see kind of a sneak peek for the Loki show, like Loki's like that's him, you know, and he's like visibly afraid. You can see that he's terrified. It's like this is supposed to be one bad villain and he's beaten by ants. Like come on. It would be like if you were to set Thanos up with the Infinity Stones and then like freaking I don't know who's a lame Marvel hero like like
Howard the
freaking
Duck.
yeah, like freaking Howard the Duck just comes in and punches him in the face and then he's defeated. Come on, you're gonna set up this really cool villain and then just have him be and to have him be beaten in such a lame way was kind of disappointing to me. And like, you know, that's not to say that there weren't good things about this movie. Like the realm was interesting. It was a good bit. I mean, it was a CGI fest, but there were some interesting character designs in there, and like, some of the jokes did land, but most of them didn't. One joke I can think of in particular that I just was like, ugh, this shit is not funny was the jelly guy when after he got shot and then he's like, I have holes. I was just sitting there thinking, like, but you know what? That's another example of a joke that did land was the how many holes do you have? And then they were like, he has five. And then and then Scott
7.
like oh 7. What was it 7? Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
it
He
was
was
7.
like, you have 7, and then Scott stopped and like thought for a bit, and he was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like that was funny. Like I enjoyed that, you know. But then another thing I just didn't really like about this movie is to me personally, it just didn't feel like there was anything original in here. Like it was all stuff that we've seen before. Heck, when you go into the quantum realm, it becomes a Star Wars movie. Like seriously, like it felt like Peyton Reed wanted to make a Star Wars movie, but he was stuck with Ant-Man, so he's like, "All right, I'll work with what I got." Like that scene with Janet and Hank when they meet uh all those like raider creatures and like Janet like stabs him to like say hi. Like I don't know what the point of that scene was. She like stabs him and then they're friends. Like I guess it was a test or whatever. I don't know what was going on there. But like the costume designs, they literally looked like some of the raiders from Star Wars. Like and then like a lot of like the bar scenes with the aliens, that was like okay, I've seen this in Star Wars before. And then I kind of just like rolled my eyes like near the end where Cassie got on the big hologram and she was like, "We all need to fight. We need to rise. Go against the oppressor." It's like, "Oh geez, how many times have you seen this in like countless other movies? Like this is like I've seen this before in Ready Player One, and even when it was done in Ready Player One, it was still done a million times before, you know." So there was that and then like what did you think of Modoc, Miranda? You didn't mention him when you were saying your thoughts. So really quickly, what did you think of Modoc?
Well, I don't know who he is, but I love the fact that they're like, hey, we got this character, he got sent to the quantum realm, let's make him weird. Although he did remind me of the brain guy in TMNT, so I don't know why that has a connection to it. But I don't know, he's fine. I thought it was funny. Be like, ah, okay, Darren, whatever. I know people are like, ah, he's like this great villain, he like fought Captain America or Iron Man or whatever, but like this isn't the comics. It's a movie. They're different. If you didn't even watch Loki, you wouldn't even have known anything about King. So, or yeah, that's his name, right?
Yeah, King.
Yeah, like you wouldn't know anything about him, but the fact that he was like, there's this person that I could use to like mess with Scott. I thought that was fine.
So the thing with like Modoc was he looked ridiculous. Like his outstretched like CG face just looked ridiculous. I laughed my ass off when I first saw him. Like I don't know if the filmmakers were intentionally I don't know if that's what they were aiming for. Like were they aiming for him to be laughed at or were they trying to like because I couldn't take him seriously. Like, like he just looked ridiculous, man. Like, there was a good example of people online were saying the thing that was missing from Modoc was a lot of the body horror, and I agree. He should have looked a little more grotesque instead of just taking Darren's face and just like stretching it out. Like, I think it would have looked better right there. And then like there was like I did kind of like the whole "don't be a dick" uh thing with Cassie. I thought that was funny, but then they kind of ruined it there at the end where he was like, "I'm not a dick." It's like, okay, it was funny before, but now you're pushing it. So, but yeah, I couldn't take Modoc seriously. And then like I thought the whole like ants like living thousands of years through like some weird time warp and becoming technologically advanced. I just thought that was dumb. I know it's a comic book movie. It's about a man that can literally shrink down to the size of an ant. The concept is already kind of ridiculous, but I just felt like that was dumb because it just felt like a convenient way for the writers to be like, all right, now here's this thing that can come in and help at fight at the end with the big boss fight. Like, I don't know. Like, I thought that was kind of dumb. And like you had mentioned before, Miranda, like, okay, this is a movie. It's different from the comics. So why does it matter? Well, my counterpoint to that is yes, it's an adaptation. Things are always going to be different with an adaptation. But that doesn't mean you should stray from the source material because in the end, when you're adapting something, people are still going to want you to somewhat stick to the source material. Now, granted, I don't really know much of his origins and whatnot, so like I can't really say whether this deviation from the source material was a good move or a right move, but like that would be my one way to defend that is like when people want you to stick to the source material, like you don't always necessarily have to, and in an adaptation, it should be encouraged not to completely follow the source material, but you should still somewhat honor it in a way. Sometimes if you change things too much, it doesn't end up feeling like the original.
I think like a perfect example is like Namor in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where he's so different from the comics version, but like the essence of the character is still like there. Like
Yeah,
he's still like
yeah,
the anti-hero kind of
exactly.
character.
But like, so yeah, I guess in a way, you shouldn't change things so much to where it's not familiar. There we go. Like, yeah. But I mean, yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It had its moments, but there was a lot with it that I felt just didn't really work as well.
Is it my turn?
Your turn. You have the floor, Udi.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go off of my letterbox reviews because that's like where I emphasize all my points. Just to start out with, like looking at this movie as objectively, just as a movie, like taking out like me being an MCU fan, just it being a movie that exists and me just being a human being that can watch it, it is a perfectly okay movie. You can keep like the first two acts for the most part, as long as you take out the pointless resistance stuff, which again is tried and true, like Dan said, adds nothing to the story, has characters that mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like adding this whole resistance arc did nothing for the movie, just padded out the runtime, which in my opinion did not need to be padded out any more than it already was. If anything, should have been shorter. You take that entire thing out from the first two acts, and I don't. So Modoc is, I think, traditionally, if I remember correctly, he's an Iron Man villain. And for those of you that played like the Avengers video game that came out in 2020, I think that's a fairly similar story beat wise, like backstory of that character. It's like a scientist that worked with AIM or for AIM, and then something happens, and then he becomes Modoc. Like somewhat roughly around those lines. That's how that character goes. Like Miranda said, it's an adaptation. The MCU has been prone to changing things for the movies. Okay, that's fine. I don't inherently hate Darren Cross being Modoc. Like I remember way back when I totally forgot about it, but I remember hearing about it initially, like a few months ago or last year, that was apparently rumored that he was going to come back as MODOK. I was like, that's kind of interesting. I kind of like that because yeah, he just kind of vanished and then he came back, and it's like okay, that's kind of cool. However, the fact that they couldn't even remotely try to do anything interesting with the character, they just made him this pathetic little worthless character that wasn't threatening at all, was just a literal joke from the way that he looked to the way that he like sounded to the way that he acted to the things he said. Like there is not an ounce of sincerity there. He just existed to be a joke for to be laughed at. And like people can give the Avengers game as much crap as they want, whatever. But at least in the game, they gave a genuine attempt at like trying to make a more like a serious approach to the character. Like it is a pretty absurd character. It's just like a floating head with little arms, little legs. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's a silly character. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it seriously. And again, like it doesn't mean that he has to be like a super like he has to be like a Terminator or something like that. I'm not saying that, but if you can't take your character seriously, which is like a whole thing with all the Ant-Man movies that I have a problem with, if you can't take your character seriously, then you can't ask or expect your audience to take it seriously because you're not even doing it to begin with. So it's just a joke. But yeah, so anyway, so if you take out the Resistance arc and you take out the silliness from MODOK, or at least like give him a serious pass, like an actual attempt to make it an actual character, I actually liked the first two acts. I remember because I had to watch it twice. I remember sitting there like really analyzing the movie because I was like, what are the points that work and what are the points that don't work? And for me, like I said, the first two acts, it's a decent setup up until Scott is like he's like doing his heist or what I thought would be a heist. It's actually pretty good. Like I could see myself liking that movie if you took out the things that I said. But then as soon as the heist happens, it's just not it kind of goes down for me from there because the heist is just like a 10-minute thing that isn't really that hard to do. They just kind of figure out how to get it. He comes back and then instead of just leaving and winning, Kang up until this point had been like he'd been threatening, he'd been pretty smart, he'd been shown to be powerful. Like he said, he wiped out entire timelines by himself, he wiped out entire teams of the Avengers by himself. And he's a formidable enemy. And then instead of just leaving, he stays to monologue to these people that already had no chance about like of fighting against him or anything. And it's like, why? Why would you not just leave? And then he has like the most pointless like faceless goons ever, and then he ends up just losing again to ants. Like at least you could argue like, oh well, he lost to Ant-Man, this or that, but like he just lost to ants. He didn't even get beaten by the hero or the Wasp, and no one. He got beaten by ants. And that whole thing just felt kind of like an episode of Rick and Morty to me because it's like usually the way Rick and Morty goes, like something stupid will happen like the very beginning, and it's just like a little kernel of an idea planted in the back of your brain. And at the end of the episode, they're in like in a hopeless situation, and then like this stupid little thing snowballed into like this great thing and saves them, and then somehow they're saved, and okay, well, it's time to go back home. And that's kind of how it was, where it's like you see the ants like go through the quantum realm, and then they're gone, and then you like see Hank like hearing things throughout the movie, but you don't like, okay, what does that mean? And then finally at the end, you're like, oh, he was communicating with the ants, and they were trying to get a hold of him and trying to find him because they became like sentient, technologically advanced ants, and now they're gonna come and save the day. And it felt like an episode of Rick and Morty where like Morty somehow becomes separated from Rick, and Rick got it's like a Rick situation, and like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And then Morty comes, and he has like an army of Mortys that are super intelligent, like we can save you, Rick. And then they go and they get back to their house, and it's like, okay, yay, we're saved. That's how the end of the movie felt because every possible chance that you had to like end no, hold on, to end in an interesting point, they just solve it immediately, and then it just ends up like super happy and just bleh. I see your hand up, Miranda. What did
Yes.
you want to say?
So you said that it felt like Rick and Morty. It's because one of the creators from Rick and Morty worked on it, so that's why.
I know.
So,
I understand. Yeah.
which I didn't know because I don't watch Rick and Morty. So like all of that stuff, it did not trigger anything in my brain. So
Yeah, I didn't know that
yeah,
either.
Well, it's I don't know if it's one of the creators, but it's one of the writers from Rick and Morty.
yeah,
I think
Yeah, not one of
some
the
Jeff
person
Lovis.
creators.
from it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know, as I don't watch the show. So
yeah. But yeah, and like thinking about that the other day, I was like, it in my brain, if I was Kevin Feige, it would make sense to like to hire Rick and Morty writers. Like, oh, they deal with the multiverse all the time. Like they've been doing that from like super early. Like that makes sense to me. But the problem is the MCU and Rick and Morty are very different universes. They do not align very well, in my opinion. And I don't know. Like I'm at the point where I just don't want a chance ruining Avengers Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars. I would rather that if I was Kevin Feige, just get writers that I'm fairly certain will deliver as opposed to these writers that have been delivering like mixed like I don't know. I've been seeing mixed things of like Michael Waldron. He wrote Loki season 1, which people really like. But then people said that oh well he also wrote Multiverse of Madness, but then some people said but like oh well he just came on and like a quick draft of it and then they started shooting. So like he didn't really write that. And it's like I've seen conflicting information there. So it's like I don't know with him. And then with like Jeff Lovis, I think that's his name, the guy who wrote Quantumania. As far as I know, I think this is his first like major movie that he did. Like I don't I think he's only done Rick and Morty before. People need to get to start somewhere. I don't disagree. But maybe don't have it be the start to your brand new phase, setting up like the most important character, Kang, that's like supposed to be he's like the reason that this whole phase exists. I don't know. But so for me, I don't know. It just really frustrated me how like the third act just completely tanks everything. Um and so going to Kang, I guess, because I think you guys have said a good amount. Yeah, I agree with like that what Dan said earlier where I mean, you have no real reason to care right now, but about Kang, like outside of like if you're looking forward to like the next big bad of the MCU, you don't know the character, but you have to he has to be like a credible threat. And if he gets beaten in the first movie where he's shown as like the big bad, you kind of deflate all tension for the upcoming entire arc because it doesn't matter if there's an infinite amount of them. If there's an infinite amount of Kangs and they're all dumb and they're all like weak or something, then that's not a threat. That's just that's nothing.
You just need to get an infinite amount of ants. Problem solved.
yeah,
Yeah.
they keep saying he's a threat, but they never show him as a threat. He's like, I killed Avengers. I killed hundreds and thousands of people. We see one clip of his past life that Janet touched on this timeline glowy orb thingy. And he like keeps saying things, but he hasn't they never show it. You never see him because by the time we get back into the quantum verse, he already did his whole conquering of the like the whole thing. Maybe they'll show us moving forward in other movies, but also this one got exiled into the quantum verse, assuming possibly maybe he was a quote unquote good one, and that's why he is weaker, not as powerful, because he's the one that's like actually maybe we shouldn't be killing people, and then all his other versions were like nah, we're gonna send you into exile because you're not evil like us. So that could be another reason, because at the end Scott is like, hey, did we do this? Was this right? I don't know. He did say something was coming, and maybe he should have got it out because he needed to stop it. So, like, maybe that's what they're setting up. Like, they're just setting up that idea that some of these guys might have a point, might be good,
I'm pretty sure
but,
this
like,
was not a good Kang. Like
well,
he killed a lot
no,
of people.
he did.
I think this is
But, like,
supposed to be Kang the Conqueror because like his variants have different names, don't they? Like the Egyptian one and the one that looks like a Mortal Kombat character, don't they have like
Well,
different?
some of them have different names, but like the Kang from the Loki show is like another like prime Kang variant. So, because like at the statue that's shown at the end of season 1 of Loki, it looks like this Kang because this is like the prime Kang look. So I'm
Okay.
guessing, and even in the post-credit scene of Ant-Man, there's a number of them that look like this. So I'm guessing the cop out eventually will be that whatever. Like I feel like we're gonna get like one main like prime king, even though he's not gonna be technically designated that. I'm sure like that'll be like the main one that they fight or something, and then like the more wacky looking ones, like the Egyptian one and the Chinese one or whatever. Those will probably be like more like wiser, like elder kings or something. I don't know, but um,
They should all wear hats with numbers on them.
no.
Or name
The
tags.
Yeah, name tags. Like you're clone 1, you're clone 2, clone 3, clone 4.
Going back to what you were saying though, I mean, I agree that like I mean, I agree that they probably should have shown instead of just been saying. However, like again, this was his first movie. What should have happened was that because it's like when you look back at like Thanos, like he was teased at the end of Avengers 1 and he had like a quick appearance in the Guardians of the Galaxy, but that was it. Like
But he
that's
just
all
sat
we
in a
had of him.
chair and was like, "Hey
I
Ronan, you
know.
suck." That's all. They didn't like.
I know, but at least there was like some sort of menace there. Like Ronan was afraid of him. And with Kang, I think, I mean, already at the end of season 1, like you're like, oh no, of Loki. I mean, season 1 of Loki, you're like, oh no, that's not good. Like he definitely doesn't seem like a good deal, especially like with everything that He Who Remains said. It definitely felt like this is bad. This is going to be really, really bad. And then at the start of this movie, like he says all of those things, like okay, fair, like you don't see it, but like you just see like a little montage. I'm sure that eventually, let's say in this theoretical where the movie doesn't end how it ends, later on in some other movie, you would probably see him killing other Avengers or things like that. So again, it was just supposed to be the kernel, like, okay, this is setting up this character, but obviously this is not this character's movie. That's going to be Kang Dynasty, probably. We might see him in other movies, but like that's going to be his movie. So this movie, all I had to do was keep like the first two thing, like the first two acts of like setting that character up, and then once Scott completes like again this heist where that like takes up like the third act, the majority of the third act or whatever, gets in the time core, and then King just leaves. So in your brain, all you know is that he's wiped out timelines and he's wiped out entire timelines single handedly, and he's killed teams of Avengers by himself, and he defeated Ant-Man and the Wasp and left them in the quantum realm. And like he's a threat and he's gone. He outsmarted them. Boom. And then now he's set free and you don't know where he's gonna pop up next or anything. But like he's out there. It's a looming threat and he's actually threatening. Whereas now again, he got beaten by ants and he's dead. Like they made a point to like make a post credit scene and be like, yeah, he's dead. He's not coming back. He's dead.
Is
That
he
one's
dead
actually dead.
though? Because I don't think he's dead because they don't ever kill anyone off officially because Loki keeps coming back. So like, is he
That's
dead?
different though. That's different though. They also
How?
never
Yeah,
because
Loki.
Loki is always expected to come back, and they always tease it at the end.
Well, not only that, but like the first couple of times that Loki quote unquote died, it's because he faked his death. He didn't
Yeah,
actually die. And then when he did actually die, it was a multiversal version of him that came back. So it wasn't the
yeah.
same Loki that was in Infinity War.
And they've never made a point to literally like outright say, "Hey, this character, yeah, he's dead." Whereas like this at the end of the movie, they're like, "They killed him. They got him. He's dead." Like, okay, so he is dead. Cool.
Just because
And
they said he's dead doesn't mean he is dead. Clearly, there's hundreds and thousands of him out there. Like, I've read things you guys had said, like, this movie is supposed to do this. It's supposed to do that. It was supposed to build this. Like, where are these expectations coming from? Where did anyone say, oh, this is supposed to do this? Like,
Well, like
where's that coming from? Because
it's the start of a phase.
Well, not only
It's
that,
an
but like
overarching story.
I had mentioned when I was talking about it, there was literally, and now granted, it was only a producer of the movie, so it wasn't Kevin Feige directly, but somebody who worked on the movie and was producing it said that this was supposed to be kind of like how Civil War was for Phase 3. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was supposed to be the big event that set off things into motion for Phase 5. So for me personally, that's where that expectation came from. And it's not like this was a rumor that somebody on Twitter was spreading around. It was an IGN article. Now, granted, IGN, whether you consider them to be a reliable source, that's neither here nor there, but they're more reliable than somebody like Cosmic Book News or We Got This Covered, so.
But how are we supposed to like believe them, because they're always messing around with trailers and they're always saying stuff and then not doing it and then doing it and then not doing it. So like I think the best way to like move forward into the MCU, at least this is my take on it, is to have zero expectations. If you have zero expectations, you'll never be disappointed in it. You'll always be, at least in my case, I've been mostly like pleasantly surprised, and this is like the first movie that I had a full on like emotional reaction to, as I'm sure Udi would know since he was sitting next to me. um but like other movies in the MCU, like Eternals, like I watched that and I was like, oh, I like some of these characters, but then it left my brain. Black Panther, I did think they did very well addressing like Chadwick Boseman's death, but rest of the plot I was just like, okay, yeah, that happened. Where this one is like they kind of were like, let's do a risk, let's take a risk, let's see what other things we can do, although it still ends in the giant battle at the end, as most of the things they've been doing since the beginning end that way. So I don't know. I'm seeing you guys' points and I understand them. I don't know.
Well, you see, the thing is that because you were saying, well, they've said things before in the past and it didn't deliver, so why bank? I want to say why bank on it, but I don't know if that's the right word to use. So like, why uh stick on that point? Like what? Because you see, the thing is if they promise something and then they don't deliver, we as an audience should just say, oh, okay, well, oh well, whatever. Like, no, we should call them out for not delivering on what they promised, because why are they making these promises if they're not going to deliver?
Well, also too, like I was never like the biggest fan of the Ant-Man movies, but like the first two Ant-Man movies, like I took them for what they were. They were just silly little small escapade like palate cleansers. Like it was fine. I didn't care because they didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like it introduced characters, and that's like all they were good for. Like they were good for fun, like simple laughs, and that was it. And that's fine. That is totally fine, and it had its own place in the MCU, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But then this had, because I'm guessing Peyton Reed wanted to like put on his big boy pants and do something more interesting, more exciting, bigger scope than he'd
By
gotten to do
going
before.
smaller,
Yeah,
because they're
you
in the
said that before.
quantum realm, because
Yeah,
they're
I got
tiny.
it. I got it. And
Oh,
so
maybe that's why they could defeat him, because he's
no,
tiny. That's
okay.
why
Anyway,
Kang's tiny, so he only has
so
a very, very, very amount of small power, and that's why they were able to defeat him.
I don't think that's how it works.
well, if you go back and watch
How
it
are
for
we
the
supposed to
first
know?
movie, maybe, but because they don't follow any of the Ant-Man rules ever, no. Anyway, so I went into this like I wasn't excited for it, but I went into it thinking like, okay, I don't have any expectations. I'm not even really that excited for it, but I'm excited to see Kang. And at worst, like I never hated any of the Phase 4 movies like a lot of people did. Like I think my least favorite might have been Black Widow, honestly. But other than that, like I didn't mind Eternals. I didn't think it was that bad. It was overstuffed and they bit off more than they could chew. That would have been better off as a show, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty good, or at least decent. Love and Thunder, I didn't hate it. I haven't thought about it, and I haven't had the urge to watch it until I saw it in theaters. But I didn't hate it. Like it was fine. It was what it was.
There
Was
was
it
space
silly?
dolphins.
Yeah, it was
Space
silly,
dolphins are great.
but it was fine. It was whatever. And so like this, I was like, okay, at worst, like I'll watch it, and then I'll feel the same way. But then again, you introduced it, like I said this before, not like today, but like if it had just been some random one-off villain, I would not have cared about this movie. This would have had the exact same effect on me as the other ones would have. I might have been like, yeah, okay, that was a movie, that was an MCU movie, whatever, and then like moved on. But the problem is that again, it was supposed to introduce the overarching villain, like that it like the whole point of the MCU, because it's an overarching story, is that it's setting things up so that you can like build up to things. Because otherwise, yeah, if you don't ever build up to anything, then it's like after a while, it's like, okay, well, what's the point? Why are we watching these? Like, I love the characters, but like if you're gonna have an interconnected universe and it's not building to anything, then it's like, then why are we here? Why are we watching this? And that's what makes the MCU so great is like eventually when you get all these characters and you combine them together and then you have some sort of formidable force, like that's exciting to watch because it's like all these characters that you love fighting against like an actual threat that where they might lose, and that's exciting, that's interesting. And again, when you set up the brand new big bad threatening thing and then it gets beaten in the first outing that you see him in, there's no tension there to be had. And this is the beginning of like a whole arc. So now you just deflated the whole arc, and it's like, well, why do I care now? And like I said, I didn't have any expectations going into this. I didn't love the Ant-Man movies. It's not like I expected to love this. I didn't expect to hate it either, though. And I don't even know that I hate it, but it just like it irks me just because again, there's like a kernel of a good movie here, but they clearly tweaked the ending to the point where they were just either too afraid of like ending on a downer or they were too afraid of doing something more daring, more interesting, and they just like made it the most bland, like, oh, we're gonna end on a happy note. He look, Paul Rudd is so silly. You get nothing out of it. And it's fine to have like silly, goofy movies, but again, like either keep them to their own little self-contained escapades where they don't have any sort of effect as like at large, or get someone who's actually going to deliver the overarching stuff, and then you can keep the silly stuff, that's fine. But then at least deliver on the other stuff. If you can't deliver on the big stuff, then why are you even making the movie to begin with? Because we
I
are
will
also just wasting our lives watching this to a degree. What were you gonna say?
I will say because you had mentioned how they kind of went safe with the ending instead of doing something more daring or interesting. I will think that, or I will say that I think it would have been very interesting if they had ended the movie with Ant-Man and the Wasp being stuck in the quantum realm. I think that would have been very interesting if they would have ended it that way.
I
Yeah.
thought for a second that they were going to do that, and I did think
Yeah,
they were
I
going to
did think
kill
that.
Scott off. I was fully ready, prepared for him to die. So like they could have changed that ending, but like I don't know what they would have done because then they would be stuck in the quantum realm, and like, are they really gonna go back to the quantum realm again?
Well they
But
could have built up a story about Cassie going in to try and get them back, but I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
so like
I
they
mean,
could have
you go.
changed that ending. I think it would have added more stakes to the movie. And like I don't know, they say they have a plan, so I'm sure when we get to phase 6 and we look back, we'll be like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense now. Like how everyone was like, I don't understand the through line of phase 4, like I'm not really getting it. And then after everything came out and everyone is like, oh, it's about grief and losing someone and just like um dealing with yourself and your being, because like WandaVision dealt with grief, um Black Panther did, many other ones did too, like Moon Knight, he dealt with like
No Way
um
Home, Eternals,
his
kind
mom
of.
dying and stuff. So like
never really
it's like,
noticed that about the Phase 4 movies. Yeah, a lot of them did deal with grief. Interesting.
yeah, so I'm sure when we get to the future we'll look back and be like, okay, we're kind of seeing a theme here. It's just kind of really hard to judge it like right now. So
Like back in Phase 4, like I knew obviously they were building to something. I wasn't like some of the people online where it's like, what are they building to? They don't have any plan. They're just making crap. I knew they were gonna be building to something, and I figured it was gonna be Kang. And so like at the end of Loki, when we finally get that tease, it's like, oh, okay, see, look, like that is what we're building to. Like just relax. It took like 10 years for us to get to Thanos. Like we're gonna get there eventually. It's just gonna take a little bit of time. And with this, like, I understand what you're saying, but like this isn't as broad necessarily because while some of the movies that we're gonna get for sure like won't deal with any of this multiversal saga stuff really, probably, like that is gonna be like the kind of the through line because we're kind of just like pushing to Kang Dynasty at this point. Like this is like that's why this movie was supposed to set up Kang, and then we're just kind of pushing to that in like the next year or two while we get to I guess Phase 6, because I think Phase 6 starts with King Dynasty. I could be wrong, but so I don't know. Like they could change. They're at a spot where they could try to rewrite it and be like, oh well, some kings are stronger than others or something like that. But again, again, it's not the comics. It's different. I'm not even like the biggest comic person either. But from what I know about King, he's supposed to be like either the descendant of or like a clone of Reed Richards, who's like the smartest man on the planet, and he's also like centuries ahead technologically speaking. And so he's supposed to have like a genius level intellect and weapons from the future, which is what makes him so dangerous and such a formidable enemy. And in this, like, he didn't demonstrate any real intelligence and nothing substantial, at least. And his weaponry didn't seem that incredible, considering he got beaten by ants again. So it's just like, it already feels like they didn't, like, at least this king didn't really feel like a real king. But the problem is like it's all supposed to be the same character. They're just supposed to be slightly different in each version, if that makes sense. Like each multiverse version. And if you already messed up like this one, it's like they can change, they can fix it, whatever. But I don't know. Again, like it just soured me on this whole thing. Like I'm still gonna watch it. Like don't get me wrong. Obviously, I'm still gonna watch it. But then also, there's so many things in motion already that like the Marvels. Like I'm super excited for the Marvels. I love that cast. I like the director. I like Candyman, like the reboot that she made. But I'm very nervous about how the movie's gonna go because if it's another kind of whiff, like we're gonna get Guardians in between there, which I'm sure is gonna be great and it's gonna be awesome and everyone's gonna love it and it's gonna be fine. But then we're gonna get another potential whiff. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. I'm not expecting it to be a whiff. But the first one wasn't amazing either necessarily. And from like reports and whatever, like it's seeming like this is a little problematic, like the Marvels is. So it's just like we can't keep getting middle of the road movies and expecting people to like be okay with it because already like in phase 4, I don't even think there were that many whiffs like people have said or like have been complaining about, and people are already like upset about it. If we keep getting even more in phase 5, like it's just gonna get worse. And by the time we even get to like King Dynasty, like people will care, yeah, but then there's also going to be a lot of people who are going to be kind of just like over it at that point. It's like we can't be waiting to get to that point for these things to get better. We need like each project to be better and to build things up properly, if that makes sense, I guess.
And I want to say I forgot to mention this when I was doing like my thoughts. While we were on the subject of Kang, I will say that Jonathan Majors as Kang in this movie does steal the show. Like he is great as Kang, and like if you want to go see this movie, go see it at least for Jonathan Majors' performance.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Rudd is he's good too. Like he's a national treasure. We can never get enough Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
So
But
like
I'm just I wasn't trying to undermine everyone else's performance. I'm just
yeah,
saying
yeah,
that Jonathan Majors
he's the
steals the
highlight.
show. Yeah, he's the
Yeah,
highlight.
yeah, he definitely is the highlight for sure. And like I am excited to see him do more. It's going to be cool to see him be so many different versions of the same character, but I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. I will say though, and not to just be the negative Nelly here, but I'll just say that I was very sad. It's cool that we got him at all, but it's sad that we got William Jackson Harper in this very limited role, and it might not matter that like he'll never come back, but like to me, like I love him, and I would love to see him be like a constant in the MCU, like to have been like a more important character, and for him to just be like a side character. It's like okay, a side character in like one movie where we might not see him again. I don't know. Maybe in King Dynasty they go to the quantum realm and he's there, but it's just like, but this isn't the character I'd want him. I'd want him to be someone more of higher importance as is he's just kind of like some random character in the quantum realm. And it's like we could run into him again, we might not, but I just wish I remember like there was rumors that he was going to be Reed Richards, and I wasn't like that wasn't who I was like. Oh man, I can't wait for William Jackson Harper to to be Reed Richards. But like it was something. It's like oh, that's a very interesting direction. Like I don't know if they'll go that way, but that could be interesting. And then he then ended up just being like some random side character, and it's just like
He's got
disappointing.
cool mind reading powers. I mean, I find that like really cool. Like, I mean, hopefully we see his character again. Hopefully we go back and explore that universe, the quantum realm. I think it's very interesting. Like, what is society like down there? Like, what are their customs like? I would love to explore more because, like, we've got space, so, like, let's go with small space now. Like, I don't think they're probably gonna ever go back, unfortunately. They didn't even talk about Ghost from the second Ant-Man movie, so the
Yeah, that's
likelihood of
true.
him.
What happened with that plot line?
I mean, they were just about to save her, and then everyone got dusted. So, like, I don't know. Hopefully, she's okay. I think she's
And then
okay,
they
but
also introduced Colossus as well, and because they introduced Perry White. Who plays Perry White from Man of Steel? He's also
In the
Morpheus.
Matrix.
How come I can't remember his name?
I don't remember his name, but
Lawrence
yes, there we
Fishburne.
go.
There we go.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, they set up Lawrence Fishburne as Colossus, and then what happened with that?
Well, they also set up the yellow, like that one bad guy in the first movie, stealing the Yellow Jacket formula. Nothing ever came of that.
Yeah.
like, people don't tend to like the Ant-Man movies or Guardians. A lot of people are like, why should I watch this? Why should I watch Ant-Man? But like without those two movies, without these characters, literally nothing in the MCU would have like existed. You would have never gotten Thanos. You would have never gotten the Pym particle. You would never got time travel and their wonky way of doing it in Endgame. And like a lot of these movies are just like set up, but then they have like unique stories to them that are like more like found family based, like in the Guardians, and then Ant-Man's again more about family. So like I think that might be why they didn't focus on King as much, is because it's more about like Scott and Cassie and finding each other and finding them to get home, because like it's about family. I wish they would have kind of like done a bit more with that. I did see a post online that was like, what if you changed the villains and we put the God Killer into Quantumanium, and since he dealt with family and stuff, like would that have been a more interesting story?
It
And
would
then
make
switched
sense.
King over to like Thor.
It wouldn't make sense
Well,
for the. Yeah, go ahead, Udi.
actually, that was like something I meant to bring up earlier. That was like another potential like thing that could have made this movie that much more interesting, because it's like the kernel of that idea was like right there, but either they just got rid of it or they just like didn't go for it. But like when Kang and Scott are like talking and he's like in prison or whatever, I thought for like a little bit that like Kang's whole thing was gonna be like, I can get you time because you lost so much time with your daughter, like being in jail, like getting dusted, blah 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 blah. Well, he didn't get dusted; he got trapped. But like, she grew up in the 5 years or whatever. I thought like that was gonna be the thing. It's like, wow, that's a really interesting thing. Like he can offer him something that no one else can. It's like, if you do this thing for me, I'll give you time. And I thought, I was like, oh wow, that's a really interesting thing. Like that's a really interesting incentive. And I thought that's how they would play it out, whatever. But then they didn't do anything with that. And I think that would have been a lot more interesting because yeah, at the end of the day, I also agree they didn't really. I don't really feel like they did anything. Like I don't really feel like Cassie and Scott did anything. Like there's nothing there that we didn't already get in the other two movies, relationship wise. And I don't know. I just don't feel like they did anything there worthwhile or substantial or any real progression. So at least like Scott wanting like having this desire to like go back in time or get time back so that he can spend more time with Cassie would have at least been like something more interesting, or at least some interesting motivation to get him to steal like the time core or something. But then they didn't do that at all. So that was also disappointing because it's like
I
right there and they could have done that, but they
I will say we should probably wrap it up soon because this is starting to turn into like an actual Atomic
didn't.
Lizards episode instead of just this short little like
Yeah.
thoughts
Yeah, I
thing.
just
So
checked the time and I'm pretty sure we've been going for like an hour.
yeah, so we better stop before it becomes like an actual episode.
Yeah.
would you guys like to recap your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I'll recap my
Or
thoughts.
okay.
So, once again, definitely one of the more weaker Marvel films. It has its moments. There are a few jokes that do land, interesting visuals, interesting character designs. Jonathan Majors steals the show as King, but lazy writing, full of cliches, and some jokes that just don't land definitely brought this movie down for me. I would give it 2 out of 5 stars.
Um, I'll just say um, pretty, as Dan said, pretty cliched and lacking in the more important ways. Outside of that, it's like a fine movie. It can be funny and has a few fun character moments, but I think the failures, in my opinion, overshadow the good stuff. So like it's not a terrible movie. It's not like the worst movie you'll ever watch. It's not unwatchable. I don't hate it, but the failures far outweigh the positives, in my opinion. But if you want to watch like fun Paul Rudd and Jonathan Majors, then it's a decent enough movie to watch. But I would give it 1.5 out of 5 stars.
So I understand your guys' points. I see them. I get them. But I would just really loved this movie. I love Ant-Man. I love the Guardians. They just hold a special place in my heart, and I love them so much. They're like the coolest characters, and they have cool science, and they're kind of dumb and cheesy and sci-fi-y, and I just like them. But I'm just gonna end with my letterbox review. So I freaking called it. All I wanted was Quantum Ants, and there was so many. This is the first MCU movie that I've actually had a reaction to in a long time. I laughed so much from the ridiculousness. It's absolutely the best. We have Ryan from BuzzFeed Unsolved and Watchers. We have William Jackson Harper. Cool quantum people and creature designs, cool costumes, CGI used in fun and creative ways. The music was quite good. The goop mechanic for communication was new and different. I did roll my eyes every time Kang talked because I just don't care about him. They haven't shown me why I care, so having him getting trampled by ants was great. I wish we got a line about Ghost and whether she is okay or not, and to see Louise and crew again, but sadly we did not. Gosh, I love it so much. And I also saw this with friends for my birthday, so that's a plus. And there was a Godzilla reference, so that adds points as well.
There was a Godzilla reference, yes, but dude, this movie was missing Louise. I love Louise. He's probably one of my favorite side characters in the MCU.
Yeah,
He's the
I
best.
think Luis and Kurt
Yeah.
would have made this at least a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's that. That's my thoughts. So I gave it a 5 out of 5. But we're not really gonna keep track of our averages for bonus episodes. So if you guys want to do the math, you guys can. But I'm not doing it today.
Yeah, fun little
So
activity you can do.
yeah. So if we have nothing else to say, I'm gonna close out the show. Thank you for listening to us talk about our likes and dislikes on Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumanium. You can find us on social media at Atomic Lizards Pods on Instagram. We have a letterbox at atomic_lizards, and we are now on Spotify, so you can find us there. We'll be posting episodes there and Podbean and our YouTube channel. So until next time, bye.
Boy.
Have a good night, everyone.